Welcome to Headliners 4. We're here to bring you the best in Texas journalism, the stories behind the great stories. I'm your host, Mark Morrison. Our special guests are Dalton Huey and Matt Grant of KXAN Austin. Dalton, Matt, and their KXAN team won this year's Headliners Charles Green Award for Best Investigative Reporting by a TV station. Their series called Still Practicing, Tracking Problem Doctors also received a Certificate of Merit in the Foundation's Showcase competition. Congratulations on your project. You exposed an alarming lack of transparency and accountability for Texas physicians with troubling histories. Matt, what triggered interest in this subject and what were your first steps?
Well, thank you so much for having us. We wanted to look at the state of transparency when it comes to patient safety, specifically because when we launched this project, it was on the 5-year anniversary of Dr. Christopher Dunch, who's also been known as Dr. Death. It was the 5-year anniversary of when he was sentenced to life in prison, which is pretty remarkable and unprecedented for a physician for the way they practice to be sentenced to prison, let alone to be sentenced to life. But in his case, it was so egregious. He had killed or maimed more than 30 of his patients. And so 5 years later, we wanted to look at the system to see what's changed. Are patients any safer today? And unfortunately, as we started digging more and more into it, we found that the answer was no, that patients were not any safer today than they were just a couple of years ago.
Dalton, the reporting on this subject is quite difficult. What were some of the challenges you faced in tracking down the facts, and how did you overcome them?
Yes, it was very challenging. Not only, but a large part of the challenge was that all of this information lives in a locked databank with the National Practitioner Databank, which is a federal agency. They do not release what they have. And so what was required of me to be able to do this investigation was literally one name at a time, cross-referencing it with the Texas Medical Board, with other state licensing boards that they may have been licensed in as well, and then making sure that we had this same doctor. I mean, we had a David Jones doctor. There's going to be a lot of David Joneses. So then cross-referencing their education, their birth year, tens of thousands of times, literally. And as far as I know, that is the only way with at least the Texas Medical Board that I was able to find the information that I did.
Matt, how come in so many cases doctors who have a questionable record can continue practicing in Texas and patients are left in the dark?
That's the big question. That's what we wanted to try to dig in and to find out. And it's a good one. What we found is that the Texas Medical Board basically just, according to them, didn't have enough resources. The websites, its website wasn't up to date, the physician profiles, because they didn't have enough staffing. They didn't do a continuous monitoring of the National Practitioner Databank, which Dalton had talked about. Under the new law that passed, that's going to change, but previously they didn't. It was more of an honor system, so doctors would self-report, and if they didn't, the Texas Medical Board was slow to find out and didn't have the resources, it said, to properly update its website and to let the public, its patients, know what was going on. So there were a number of factors why patients were left in the dark that hopefully this new law that was just signed will correct.
Right. Dalton, you also revealed how a number of doctors flee from Texas to other states or from other states to Texas to help keep the medical boards or patients from knowing about issues that could impact patient care. How can they do this?
So as Matt mentioned, it is an honor system, which most states are. However, in Texas at the time of our investigation, only required doctors to self-report any disciplinary actions or any adverse actions of any sort every 2 years, which was when they were required to either renew their license or 2 years from the time that they applied for their license. That has since changed, which was another win for us, because several other states we found had, a 30-day time frame where they had to report those things. And so we had a gap where, somebody could have had their license revoked in another state, applied in Texas, and gone for 2 years without anybody knowing about it. That has, like I said, has changed. The other piece of it is, keeping the medical board accountable. If they know about these things, it needs to be reported per law.
Matt, you found the Texas Medical Board wasn't fully complying with a 2001 state law requiring disclosure. And these are disciplinary actions that often occur in very serious situations. What are other states? North Carolina is one that you mentioned in the coverage. They're doing a better job in providing physician backgrounds to patients.
Yeah, and the Texas Medical Board not following that law is one of the questions we raised, as where's the teeth in the law if there's no consequences for the Texas Medical Board ignoring it. We did look at other states. North Carolina, as you mentioned, is one that we found to be pretty transparent. In Texas, you might have on the physician profile that a doctor, it might be one line that they were disciplined in North Carolina and it was resolved. But in North Carolina, it will have the full disciplinary records. So you can actually go through there and read all of the documents yourself. So it's just another level, a great level for patients of transparency and accountability. Another state that we looked at that also was very good about being transparent, about being very diligent in disciplining doctors who violate the law is Florida. And just in terms of access to records, Florida Sunshine Law is great. I mean, just simple things like trying to get a copy of a doctor's license application to try to cross-reference some things. That's sealed in Texas, but in Florida, we could obtain that. So Florida is a great example, and North Carolina are great examples of states that are doing it pretty well when it comes to transparency for patients.
All right. Dalton, you brought viewers the human side of this story. What is the toll on patients of not knowing more about problem doctors?
I mean, worst case scenario, we're talking about a patient who is harmed, or a loved one is killed because of negligence or poor medical practice on the physician side. On the overarching end of things, I've used the term informed decisions throughout this whole investigation. Everybody should be able to make an informed decision about who is going to be providing them healthcare. It's not saying that every doctor who has had a disciplinary action is a bad doctor, but at the end of the day, I would like to know, if I'm picking a pediatrician for my son, good doctor or not, that there has been a issue. And that is our rights as patients to be able to make those decisions. And, hopefully now those decisions will be made with significantly more transparency and information.
Matt, it's so gratifying when a series like this actually has impact. And your series got a lot of traction with some politicians, and a major patient safety bill was signed into law in Texas. Now that the legislative session is over, how much progress did you see?
I mean, a huge progress. That this bill is a big win for Texas patients. And kind of bouncing off of what Dalton said, I mean, people go online to look at reviews for everything. You want to know where the best hamburger is in town, right? You'll go on Google and you'll research that. If you want to look at the hotels, which ones might have had bed bugs or something, right? I mean, we look at reviews for everything. Patients deserve to have the full information that they can get, as much information as they can get about the doctors who are treating them and their loved ones. And this new law, will take a big step in helping doing that. I mean, I just want to read some of the points that this new law is going to address, because it's so important for Texas patients. If doctors lie on their medical license application, in Texas, it's now going to be a Class A misdemeanor. Doctors who've had their licenses suspended, revoked in other states for cause will be prevented from practicing in Texas. All doctors in the state will now be required to be fingerprinted and go through a criminal background check with the Department of Public Safety. All physicians will be monitored through the National Practitioner Databank monthly. And if the Texas Medical Board learns about any disciplinary actions out of state, they're required within 10 business days to update the public physician profiles. This will make the Texas Medical Board more accountable, and it will help patients make more informed healthcare decisions.
Dalton, that's terrific progress. What are the biggest remaining issues, and how do you plan to keep the subject in front of the public and decision makers?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is just keeping updated, tracking that the medical board is being held accountable with the new law that's been implemented, and then expanding our research, our investigation beyond the state of Texas, but to any and every other state that we can, or that has interest in doing it. And there have been a couple other states that have reached out to us, but there hasn't been one doctor that we have spoken with who told us the same thing is happening across the board. It's just a matter of exposing it, doing the investigation, and the more that we can get other states to be more transparent and be held accountable, the more information that we as patients have in the U.S.
Thanks, Matt and Dalton, and to your team that included Chris Nelson and Josh Hinkle, the contest judge and veteran TV journalist Frank Palapello summed up your work. KXAN took on a challenging, timely, costly project that was a year in the making and told the story through the eyes of the victims, the families that too often fall victim to a system that protects bad docs and not their patients. It is journalism at its finest. Congratulations again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
On our site, headlinersfoundation.org, you can link to KXAN's award-winning stories and to interviews with other outstanding journalists. For my colleague and Headliners Forum producer, Gary Pickle, I'm Mark Morrison.